Your Holiness, thank you for joining us again this afternoon. We really appreciate your time. And welcome back, everyone. We hope that you had a good rest. Maybe a little bit of fluids.
Perhaps I think good rest with empty stomach. Just have it. Take a save. Oh, this is a lassi. Yes.
So, this afternoon, Your Holiness, we'd like to have a more general discussion, but we'd like to ask you to first make some comments. And as I was thinking about this morning, one of the unique and important aspects of Sally McFaig's work is that it's actually encountering, it's the case of a religious tradition, in this case Christianity, encountering really in some ways a very new situation, the environmental crisis. Of course, when Christianity began, there are certainly notions of the environment, but even that word is not present in the way that we use it now. And and so our understanding that crisis, how do we understand what is happening to us in the environment? How do we understand our role? How do we understand our responsibilities? These kinds of questions for Christians are very important if one is going to have a response. And I'm wondering, Your Holiness, of course, part of what we're hoping here also is to inspire a secular vision, but sometimes it's very important to have this perspective of the religious traditions, and where they overlap and intersect is sometimes the place where the secular emerges. So I'm wondering if Your Holiness, from a Buddhist perspective, there might be something that could be said about the present situation, which I think for Buddhism as well, in some ways is a very new situation, an environmental crisis that we've never had to face before. What are our responsibilities? How do we understand this from a Buddhist standpoint? This might be something perhaps that you would be willing to address, if you might.
Ecological I think it is true. At the time, Buddha or Jesus Christ or Muhammad, these great sort of preachers, as he came, then environment issue, not I think not exist. Then in Buddhist tradition, in Vinaya, some verses, Buddha mentioned about trees or these plants.
It's the monastic disciplinary texts.
And also, you see, he mentioned when at that time, you see, monk not stay permanently one place, but go different places. So the monk is who already sort of planted something. Then those monks who later, after that group, you see the new comers, you see how to instruct them, how to take care of these plants, these things.
Responsibilities of the new monks who are coming to the old residence towards the plants that are planted around.
Sometimes I'm not serious, but something like as a joke. As a Buddha, when he born, he prefer in the open space,
tree.
Under tree, he prefer born there instead of in the palace. Then, when he reach final enlightenment, not in cave, but again under tree. Then, when he passed away, again under tree, he passed away. So it shows Buddha. We
could say
he loves greens. So if he join politics, he may create green party. But then I think basically I think we, the religious people, you see, who suppose the practice of love and compassion, not just love oneself, but love to other, also animal. So then, naturally, through that way, you see, sort of take care about the nature, about these plants, or grass, or these things. I think one thing the Buddha mentioned, Kyochoba, Shin Kyochoba.
One of the precepts for the monks is to avoid cutting life and then digging earth unnecessarily.
Cutting living things.
Cutting living things
living
like plants. So this is particularly relevant during the rainy season retreat. So not cutting a plant or plucking leaves is an important precept.
So there are some sort of indication. Take care about the environment. And then these trees are actually, I think, the life of many birds, many insects is entirely dependent on these. So out of our respect, or taking care their existence, so we have to take care, plant these things. Then I think basic human nature, I think we love greens, I think. Even those who's big city, like, isn't it? Big city, even you see the artificial
Flowers.
Or flowers or some plants there. So that means deep in human mind, so we love greens. So in ancient time, sort of our species start, they're very much part of the nature. Trees. Without tree, even some tiger or some sort of animal, you see, attack, no way is it to escape, but because of the climb up. So some monkey, very clever, they watch. If there's some danger, they immediately climb. I think ancient time, I think we also like that, I think. So basically, in deep inside, we love this because of the
nature.
This technology, very useful, but these are something new. But vegetations, trees, 1,000 years old. It's very familiar.
Relationship, Lam.
And then I think we religious people, as I mentioned earlier, our main practice is love for others.
For others.
So we must respect all different forms of life, and then particularly life with experience, feeling. I think our sort of respect or genuine sort of love towards animal, there's less sort of tendency if I help or serve them, what I will get reward.
I can get something back.
A human being, I show love or show care. I get some benefit from them, isn't it? So I think love to human being or smile human being, sometimes there is sort of selfish sort of because of that
motivation,
because of the interest also. The love to animal, and if possible, even to mosquito, we will never get any benefit from that. So that's really genuine sort of selfless love.
Selfless love.
So that I feel. And then, then today, the ecology is something serious sort of matter. So then, all believer, This is supposed to be serving humanity, isn't it?
Yes.
So this is our only home.
Yep.
We must take care. If one day God bring us to moon or some other space, then okay. We
can neglect, ignore the world.
we're looking for a new home somewhere. But that's impossible.
We don't have a home. No. This is our only home.
Yes. So therefore we have to take care. Then religious people supposed to show other people the value of ethics. So we must lead, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The other day, I mentioned to Archbishop Tutu.
No.
I mentioned him. I also believe he is man of God. You see, stand, principle, and taking care of other, practice of forgiveness, actually implement the movement of reconciliation. So I consider him as a man of God. So people who believe God should be good example to others. Clear?
Yeah.
So that's my view.
Your Holiness, one issue that's very important that I think Sally pointed out that I just wanted to follow up on was also how one motivates a group of, let's say in her case, her fellow Christians. What kind of a picture of their responsibility can be presented so that they will feel like they must do something, and even a kind of plan of action and of how they should proceed. Do you have any encouragement or even guidance for Buddhists who are seeking to become more involved in these issues, what they might do?
Of course, we usually taking survey. I think last now a few decades, not only in India but also inside Tibet. There's some monastery is a carrying plantation,
tree plantation.
So that also is one form of sort of serving people to create sort of better place, happier place. So I think if you have some kind of also the sincere sense of responsibility, sense of community, and first our own place. I don't know 가서 이 단계 되고 즉 사자 즉 다 가서 오면 즉 가서 사고진 살베든지 간다 즉 사자다 즉 돌아야 되면 서로 즉 신의 매듭지 좋다 자 당제 도스 쓰고 다디 신주 모수니 교단도 주는 저 디로
For example, in the Buddhist, classical Buddhist concept of karma, so in the classical Buddhist
I
concept,
often used to telling,
in classical Buddhist concept of karma, there is a notion that effect of karma need not necessarily be confined to individuals' experience. There could be a collective effect in the form of environment where you live. So an environment where you live which is not hospitable, not pleasant, is often seen as also partly a collective karmic effect. So one could, His Holiness was saying that as a Buddhist one could respond to this and say, well, this is my karmic effect, I can do nothing. On the other hand, one can actually improve it to make the area where one lives more hospitable, more pleasant by planting trees and making it cleaner.
And also you see these birds and beautiful butterfly, these things, almost like ornament, ornament.
Yes.
When I spend, a few days in big city, then some cases, a place where there's a lot of trees and birds from
Singing.
early morning singing. You feel, you are part of the nature.
That's right.
And you feel something very fresh, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
The big house, big building like New York. Now Chinese also copying that. Big building, big building. So, just like something like I think we love nature. So sometimes we is surrounded by artificial things. I think deep inside may not be very peaceful or something. Everything artificial. Then you yourself also becoming artificial. And hypocrisy. Hypocrisy develop suspicion, distrust. With that, how can develop genuine friendship? Genuine friendship not based on money, not based on just education, knowledge, but based on warm-heartedness. Isn't it? Without that, we are a social animal. No way be a happy person. What do you think, Vijay?
I agree.
Oh, that's good. Perhaps these people, consider we human beings something like composition or chemical. They not yet, get sort of clear picture about mind.
And consciousness.
Yes, Sally has something, and then did you? Well, maybe I'll take Jonathan, and then Sally has a comment.
Your Holiness.
Go ahead, Sally. Yes.
Yeah, Your Holiness, you spoke about home, of seeing our planet as a home.
Yes.
And this is such an important idea, I think, because we need to feel, we need to be able to not just know that our home is good, but we need to feel it. And one of the things that I have heard is some people treat the planet as if it were a hotel, and you go into the hotel and you use the hot water and the towels, and then you throw everything in the middle of the room, and you walk down the street, and the next night you go into another hotel. But we don't have lots of hotels. We have, as you said, just one home. And how can we come to love that home deeply, with deep, deep awareness? Children do.
Yes.
One of the amazing things about children is that they're more interested in a real live caterpillar than a picture on television of a dragon, of a real animal. And sometimes what grown-ups do is tell children they shouldn't love animals so much. That's childish. You'll outgrow it. We should never outgrow our so-called childish love for natural beings. So those are possibilities to think of our place as home rather than hotel, and to encourage in all of us the deep feelings that children have naturally for caterpillars and all other animals. Maybe not mosquitoes.
If some mosquito here, I think they really get disappointment.
I know. Sorry, mosquitoes.
Yes.
But I would add a word, actually, about mosquitoes. You said that mosquitoes don't respond and love us back.
Oh, yes.
This is true. But if we only love what loves us back, then we get some reward.
Yes.
Whereas what we need to be able to do is love even when we don't get a reward back. And that's the difference with self-emptying. People who sacrifice and are self-emptying, they don't love just because somebody's going to love them back. They love because it's the right thing to do, and they feel the love of the divine coming through them. And so it's we have to be able to love without return. And so we have to include the mosquito.
Yes, yes, right. And that kind of sort of, because of the genuine love, genuine compassion is unbiased.
Yep.
So that kind of love can extend towards your enemy, who actually harms on you, harming on you. Usually, the people, these things get rid of.
Let it.
But the genuine practitioner of love must keep genuine compassion, genuine sense of concern of their well-being. Now here, the sugar at the end, trouble so somebody, the Javi does the Basson. They manage some of the Javina, then genuine love.
So, for example, even in the case of trying to reach out to an enemy, if the consideration comes primarily from the fact that, by doing so, the person may, eventually come to love me, then there is a self-regarding consideration. Whereas if you reach out, of course, one could recognize that as a possibility, but that if that is the primary consideration, then it's not a pure love.
That's right.
Jonathan, you had a comment.
Well, first I would disagree and say that I think mosquitoes love us too much. That's the problem.
The mosquitoes are
Okay. You see, I have some experience. Also, it's because of public talk, I often used to mention that. When I mood, it's good. And also, you see, quite sure, no malaria carrying.
in that area.
Then I give some blood. Mosquito. Just out of curiosity, look. And then his body, his or her body become red.
Right.
And then sometimes,
They drop something that looks like a little bubble,
then fly. No sign of appreciation. So often, you see, I ask audience, and particularly one time in Oxford University, in front line, some great professors, old person, looks very
dignified.
Long hair.
Dignified.
Dignified professors. I asked them, anyone who have some sort of idea, the brain size, which level have the ability, appreciation of others, sort of the good thing. Nobody answer. So still that, my curiosity is still there. Animal kingdom, they have this sort of brain, or which basis of their mind. So the movement, they also choose. They know the light go out. Then this is right time. They know. So they also have the brain, some mind. And also emotions must be there. So, but then, because of the part, because of
The size.
the part of brain which usually is develop a sense of appreciation, is a sense of love, sense of respect. Dogs, cats, yes, they have. We show. Birds also, we show genuine love. They also respond. Isn't it? So butterfly, this I don't know. And then smallest mosquito or she.
Lice.
Lice, yes.
And because of fleas are
Fleas.
Yeah. So Your Holiness. My comment actually was really more to answer the question that you asked Richie Davidson, because he doesn't have the microphone, and I figured I would answer on his behalf about what is known between mental human appreciation for the environment. And a famous ecologist, E.O. Wilson from Harvard, he's come up with a term called ecophilia. Philia is love for nature, and that there have been some experiments done in hospital patients that are recovering after surgery that are in the hospital, and some patients look outside their window and they have a brick wall, just a brick wall. And other patients in rooms where they're recovering, where they look out the window and they see trees and nature, that those patients that see green and nature, they recover faster. They have faster recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And along those lines, Jonathan, there's even some work by a man named Scott Atran, who's written a book. I can't quite remember the name of it. Maybe someone else can. We could look that up later. But he's even demonstrated that certain cognitive capacities having to do with location and space and other features as well, I don't remember the details quite, are lost when one is a city dweller. So that people who live in the countryside and who are located within forests especially have capacities to know their environment in a way that we who were raised in cities no longer have. We actually lose certain kinds of cognitive abilities.
I think the trees, these are, you see, shows life. And
concrete.
Concrete seems no life. Of course, the
Of course, I mean, one could say that the concrete things do have life. They have a certain span during which they, after a certain point, they get destroyed. But comparatively, I mean, in a sense, they are not alive if you compare them to trees.
I think that's very true, very true. See something fresh,
alive,
growing. You also feel more sort of fresh.
Diana, you had a comment. Red mic, please.
Yes. I just wanted to, Your Holiness, to say one more word in favor of the mosquito, because I heard Your Holiness talk about the beauty of birds and how they inspire you. Well, the mosquito sacrifices itself to feed the birds. So they return the favor indirectly, because they bite us, they go off, the birds eat them, and then the birds return the favor by the music.
정불림부제. 그디 누구는 잘하시더가. 딱그 뒤에 공기 년부를 쏘면서 정불림부제 쏘면 거기.
This
자와르는 차와 시비스도스. 근데 정불림부제 연 숨부시비스 있어야 돼. 정불림부제 쏘자.
This reminds His Holiness of a book that was about such a scholar whom His Holiness knows very well, and in that he talks about his experience.
Truly good scholar, non-sectarian, and good practitioner, very humble. Humble Satan to Zogor George.
Says that he's too humble, that he sometimes doesn't take care of his hygiene.
So usually he wear glass. But glass
sometimes one of his glasses is broken, actually. He doesn't take care of it. So he has written his experience of living in the heat of the central plains of India, particularly in Varanasi. And in his book, he describes the experience, and he talks about how in the heat of Varanasi in the central plains, it's so difficult that also he gets so annoyed and pestered by what he calls the...
Actually, mosquito, but he
uses a
very
beautiful
name.
He says, those flies that sing with a flute.
So some guy, so this guy flew away.
Flute.
That's their beauty, maybe.
To follow up on Diana's point, even in nature, there is no altruism in nature. That is, Animals, for the most part, can't decide to be self-sacrificing, but they are sacrificed. The same pattern that we see, that we're trying to get in human beings, is done voluntarily. That is, we can decide to sacrifice for other life forms. But the whole scientific view says sacrifice, limitation, sharing, give and take, this is all part of the natural world. It isn't just something that human beings have thought up. It's the way reality works. And so when we do it, we're not doing something that just humans do, even though the mosquito doesn't know that he's sacrificing his or her life, but they are.
Now here, my explanation is the compassion or sense of love, sense of caring, right? Or sense of sort of caring of others' well-being. There are two levels. One level, biological level.
The what?
Biological level.
Yes, right.
Biological.
Yes.
Like the birds, the mother bird, sometimes willing to sacrifice her own life in order to save their youngsters. But that is purely biological factor. We human beings also, that's similar, biological level.
That's right.
Now religious faith, not a biological factor. Because of human intelligence, now we develop using this faith. So we accept religion or some deeper sort of
meaning,
reality, already beyond biological factor. So now with that, use human intelligence, the seed of compassion as a biological factor. With the help of human intelligence, reasoning, we can promote biased, limited love, compassion, with help of intelligence, then reach infinite, unbiased level of compassion. That we can do.
That's right, absolutely. It's a wonderful way to put it.
So when you mentioned miliyati kare rangshing catch at yung sarchi. Mare buku mare tegi buku chunjuki. Mare mama ti mata ti ande derwa. Tegi ji songsonga. Buku chunjuk liya das ji environment tonaji cheche. And campus buku ti jabjung ti.
So Sally, you spoke about how children naturally have certain empathy towards nature and love of nature and
animal or
animals. And then sometimes the grown-ups tend to kind of dismiss them and sort of suggest they should grow out of it.
So now here, I think ultimate responsibility is our education system. This is my feeling. The modern education system, I think about 1,000 year old, because the separate education institution started in Europe. One time, in Italy, which place, I don't know.
Bologna.
The university, Bologna University, give me one award or something.
Doctorate, perhaps?
Honorary degree.
Honorary degree. So I remember very clearly, because their tradition, besides some others, because of the head or these things, you have to put one ring. So monk prohibit wearing ring. So out of my respect, their tradition, I also put the ring. About 1 hour ceremony. So I remember very clearly. So they told me, at that year, 1,000 year
anniversary.
So I noticed, that's very old. So when these separate education institutions started in the European continent, the moral ethics, these things, or love, kindness, these things, carried by church. Now time change. The influence of religion little bit decline. So the education institution increasing, growing. But at the time the separate education institution started, then the newly started institution no responsibility to taking care about warm-heartedness. Clear. Then eventually the technology, science and technology develop. Then our education is mainly concerned about the science and technology and these things. So it can be something like materialistic oriented, materialistic oriented. So naturally, people, human beings who train through that way, inner value, nobody say importance of inner value. Only material values. So when they grown up that way through education, then they consider matter, money is more important. Completely neglect about our inner value. So these things. Then, on the other hand, if we try to bring
to balance this,
if relying on religious faith, I feel not sufficient. Religion, any religion, never be universal thing.
Right.
Clear. Now these sort of the point which we are discussing, the love and compassion, these inner value is universal. So without touching religion, simply use our common experience and common sense. That most, as I think yesterday or day before yesterday, I also briefly mentioned, these scientists, so great scientists, they are finding the peace of mind very much related with warm-heartedness, sense of concern of others' well-being. So actually, that kind of mental attitude eventually change our physical condition, and obviously, it brings physical health. So these are the real concrete sort of fact which brings conviction, value of these inner
values, qualities.
Inner qualities. So in education system, purely secular way,
That's right.
these things must involve,
must be brought in.
Yes.
So whenever I sort of talk, I always mention these things. But so far, nobody came out with concrete sort of plan.
Proposals.
When I mentioned, everybody agree, seems everybody agree, but nothing happened now. I feel a little impatient now. So the other day I mentioned, right? Now, at a particular day, Riji, in his area, he also already sees some experiment, some positive result. So these should now make known more people.
Widespread.
Not religious circle, but education circle. Then, I think, as I think you mentioned, someone mentioned, I think early part of 20th century, you see people too much excited about material values, isn't it? Technology, these things. Now, later part of 20th century, even these billionaires, plenty of money, but through their own experience, now they begin to realize something lacking.
Something lacking.
As a result, unhappy.
That's right.
Isn't it?
Yes.
So that I found, I think when I talk about these inner value in Indian public, especially in poorer section, they may not respond much. In Europe, in America, also Japan, their material facility already sort of reached certain level.
Stage, no?
So when I mention these things, they understand the necessity of these inner value. So things are changing, I feel.
Yes, I feel. Yes, I agree.
And also with that, the faith, religion, also some area growing.
Yeah, right.
And provided, I think, we religious people should be practical. I often is telling my Indian friend, and also with Tibetan also, I don't like rituals, these ceremony, these things. It is better, important explanation and understanding the real sort of value. The traditional is 좀 된다로 투기요나 내 디고 마사쳐스 다 그러지도 그랬어.
Someone was saying that there's a Tibetan expression which really sums up how even a religious person can get completely kind of spoiled and become kind of careless. And the expression is this, if it matters to you, Buddha, then I will refrain from engaging in negative acts, as if you're doing a favor to the Buddha.
Almost, you see, this is nothing to do with me, but for Buddha. Absolutely wrong. Similarly, you see, nothing to do with me, but God. It's absolutely wrong. The practice love is your own interest, your own future, and humanity's future, world's future, isn't it? Whether there's God or not, whether there's Buddha or not. That's the way. So through education, not through superstition, belief, right? Practical reasons. I think that. I think we should approach it that way. This is my feeling.
Those are very, very interesting questions, Your Holiness, about the role of the secular. And as you know, through your visits at Emory University, where there is a very important notion of educating not just the mind, but also the heart. That still, how to do that exactly is still something that my colleagues and I, like Geshe-los and Tenzin, are wondering how to implement at Emory University. But I know it's really, your talks there have had a tremendous impact. But Matt, you had a comment.
Just a little bit moving backwards, what we were saying before, two examples. You were mentioning about the people in the hospital. One common friend called Eric Lamblin, who is a scientist, also will look at the effect of relation with nature. He said that once the people showed picture of different landscape to people from different parts of the world, including Eskimos who only have seen snow. And the landscape that they all thought would be the most pleasant to be will be a landscape with a lot of green open space, some water, and some trees. Even the Eskimos prefer that spontaneously. And the green open space is the place to either go looking for food or for maybe hunting. The water is the place also where you can get what you need for surviving. And the trees, as you said, is to find a shelter. So it's interesting that it's very much completely in our nature that even people who have never seen those, they immediately picked up that. And not only about the hospital.
Yes.
Not only in hospital, but even in jails. When the jails had windows opening to green space rather than brick walls, there also was less violence. And then just to say one thing about altruism, since just a reflection of what you said, no, altruism didn't come out of nowhere.
That's right.
There are millions of years of evolution. So if we have it, someone must have it also to some extent. I just want to So there are in fact many wonderful stories, and one of our friends, Franz de Waal, told me one very short one, which is very beautiful, about chimpanzees. There was an elder mother chimpanzees who had a very hard time to walk to the water place, very difficult. So some young female chimpanzee, were not related, they start the habit that when they saw the mother chimpanzee going to the water, they would run there, fill their mouth, come rushing, and the old mother would open the mouth and they will spout the water. So that seems to be genuine altruism. And then last about the mosquitoes. I mean, no, yeah, because it won't last.
Oh, yes. Now you have some answer now. It seems so.
I think in Buddhist terms, when we say sentient beings,
yes,
of course it's about pain and suffering. But pain and suffering is not only subjective pain, atsatsa, or I feel pain, uyuyuy, or I, or the whichever language, ouch, you might use. It's also the tendency to avoid what's harmful to life and go towards is beneficial to life. So in that sense, isn't it that in the Buddhist notion of sentience, it doesn't mean that we think, oh, I'm in terrible pain, or you have enough brain functions to reflect on your pain or subjectively feel the pain, but if you just avoid something and go towards something, that's the most simple definition of sentience. So I would really like to, Your Holiness, comment on that. I mean, what is the simplest form, what we say is a sentient being?
Yes.
I think one practice 강도 수단 drop-에서 더니 군le mandations. 샤라 사바타고의 초도적인 zimbushos.
This relates to the Buddhist attitude towards other sentient beings, including animals. There's a very influential text called the 8 Verses on Training the Mind, in which there is the following verse, says from the point of view of the practitioner, whenever whomever I may interact with, associate with, or interact with, I shall always view myself as the lower.
Yes, that's. So the genuine compassion, not look
down.
You are sort of higher,
superior.
Look down. No, not that way. Respect. You consider lowest. So now insect, even as mosquito. One aspect. We too much clever. We have the ability lying others, cheating others. Mosquito, I think, more honest. And they're so content. Once they feel their stomach, yes, no further sort of what is the
greed,
negative sort of emotions.
Attitude.
So from that aspect, we are worse than mosquito. So thinking, as the Geshe
yesterday we spoke about how the language and concepts tend to relate to real world by being selective, looking at only one facet of reality.
So therefore, is thinking that line, and you can develop some kind of conviction. Oh, I'm human being. Now, for example, my own case, I'm Buddhist monk. But as far as a certain sort of point, like honest, truthful, I'm worse than the mosquito. So then immediately you feel, other side, I have this marvelous human brain, this thinking. Then immediately your attitude, that's pity. So the training of mind, holistic sense, view the holistic world, training
So although as a practitioner one needs to adopt a holistic, comprehensive perspective on reality.
Firstly, when we get awareness, the reality, the holistic view, very important. Then when you practice one particular sort of practice, then mix it to.
Then you need to focus on specific aspects and then train your mind in that regard.
mosquito 가서 뇌진에 대비나 랑 mosquito 또 삼코도 하시도 아니 간도 수던 저에서 되니 끓을 만드셔야 용도도.
So when we look at our relationship with mosquito and compare ourselves from that angle, then we can truly take the meaning of those two lines, that when you relate yourself, compare yourself with mosquitoes, there is one angle by which we can see ourselves as being actually lower than the mosquito.
And also their mistake is that they're full of ignorance. We suppose more intelligence. Their sort of wrongdoing, in case some wrongdoing, is completely out of ignorance.
Whereas our wrongdoing is something that is done with knowledge and awareness.
That's much worse. Yes.
Well, Your Holiness, Matthew's question also relates to a question that came up at lunchtime that actually Claire Palmer, our philosopher, had raised. And this might be a good time to ask that question. Would you like to raise this question? Because this is a question about one of the issues in the environmental context is why would we care about mosquitoes? Why do we see them as sentient? How do we understand, and this is, I think, part of Matthew La's question, how do we understand this notion of sentience? So there would certainly be some philosophers, if I'm not mistaken, well, maybe you can explain this better than I can. There would certainly be some who would say mosquitoes don't seem to be sentient. Is that not right?
As I understand it, many scientists would argue that mosquitoes don't feel pleasure and pain. But it seemed that you were saying there were other, and Mathieu was saying there were other important things that were valuable about mosquitoes. And so at lunchtime we were wondering what that would be, how far the idea of sentience extends in Buddhism, and what kinds of creatures would be counted sentient.
Many years ago, when Verala there, we discussed the definition of sentient being and non-sentient. Then our agreement is, of course,
So we're talking about material, embodied beings.
Of course, from the Buddhist viewpoint, and also I think Christian, also say the concept of angels, these things. From this viewpoint also, there are different forms of lives. Some we cannot see, but we can feel through some sort of different method. You see, we can contact. But that's quite mysterious. But some of these brilliant scientists now want to, because of that, carry further sort of investigation, such as after death, body remain very fresh. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So they are now, out of their curiosity, they want to know how it happened, why. So it 저자다 가셔서다. 저자도 수지 시작한 샤비나. 구조장의 이거디디. 소랑독 구조자 이거디디. and it is.
So this His Holiness is referring to one of the Mind and Life conversations many years ago with the late Francisco Varela being present. So the discussion involved how do we define the concept of being sentient. And after a long conversation, the definition that was kind of agreed upon, at least in that group, was that it will refer to any living organism that has the capacity to autonomously move from point A to point B. So that seems to have been a kind of a rough definition that we came up with.
So the reason they sort of independently sort of move, not due to other sort of factors, not like the
magnetic kind of attraction,
but itself, you see. So there must be motivation. Motivation, there must be some desire. So there is emotion, there is consciousness. And then these small insects, if we see about to touch, they immediately
run away.
You see, stop,
avoid,
or sometimes they shizutakudua.
So they pretend that they are dead,
So that's clearly there is feeling, there is desire to protect themselves. 자상가? 또 디시고 샘대입니다. 디간 샤워.
So that's how we understand whether or not an organism is sentient or not.
따고 디다냐 그 가서 우리 고대장에 뭐저는 인데 다르고나 한듯이 부자들이 가서 러버너시 박외 아마슬 되잖아요. 그 다시. Nowadays we can find in previous 60s hardly no chicken. When I passing through from here up to Jammu airport, no selling chicken. Nowadays, in the form of development, every small city restaurant, chickens. During a very hot season, there in the sun. very cold season, remain on that. So these people consider them like a vegetable. And one time in Bangalore, where they open sort of shop, where vegetable shops. Beside vegetables, some chickens. So people consider these are just vegetable. So that's mistake. As I mentioned yesterday, gradually, then I think like us, old people, unprotective, better to go. That kind of sort of attitude, isn't it? Only because of protective way.
Kind of a monetary value. Yeah.
Old age, then if some radical leader come, then better. Because I choose.
So His Holiness's point is that it really matters a lot how we view, sentient beings. If we view the chicken as just like a kind of a vegetable, not as sentient, that has implications. So if we go down that route.
One time in Japan, one restaurant, some Japanese said they found tunga,
conch, yeah.
Living, and put some sort of kasura.
Vinegar, vinegar,
the lose.
Vinegar, yeah.
Then I just see front.
I felt very uncomfortable. So His Holiness's point is, if we go down that route, one can imagine the possibility of a situation where there's a radical leader who may decide that all the unproductive human beings could be gotten rid of. That would include the old.
Now too much population, and those old person no longer productive. Then just wasting human resources. So better to finish. If I become a radical leader, I will do that. Radical one. I think my age already reached there. You, I don't know. Still some useful, some use. Among the audience also some, perhaps I think that level already no longer use.
I have to
sorry. Get this kigo manda. Formality chigme, kage chigme.
So His Holiness is apologizing because he says that he's, first of all, very informal, and secondly, doesn't obey the disciplines that much.
Sorry.
Your Holiness, I think Greg Norris had a question or comment here.
In fact, a brief example about our relation to nature, and then a question or a request to Your Holiness. The example back to hospitals and people in hospitals, they've also found that they give some patients a plant in the room, but they say the hospital's taking care of the plant, but you can have the plant, and that helps some. But they give other patients a plant, and they say, please take care of the plant. And those patients who are caring for the plants heal even faster and do better. So we And a question for Your Holiness. This morning you said, briefly, you told us about the scripture or the teachings that if we perform a negative action and then we later perform a stronger, a positive action, we cancel the negative karma. Would you mind to explain more deeply or teach more deeply on that?
I think firstly, physical level, for example, right? You take some poisonous things. If you remain that, create more trouble.
Damage,
more antibiotic now, right? Some strong sort of antibiotic take. The previous poison sort of ability reduce.
Potency is reduced.
So similarly, the impact of the action.
Negative action.
Negative action, already there, but then if you remain there, some negative consequences sooner or later have to face. But then one stronger, more forceful, positive action involved would have to take place. Then that now less force. So,
so in this case, there could be different scenarios. In some cases, depending upon the force of that positive action that you have done, in some cases it will be overridden or neutralized, but in some cases completely kind of replaced. So that depends upon the force of the actual positive action that you have done.
So this is no. Should I learn to go?
The in Quran song that
I think now this is, the very nature of mental work. So towards same object or same person. You look from certain aspect, you develop anger, irritation. Irritation brings anger. Anger becomes stronger, then very negative feeling towards that. Now, same person, same object. Subject side also same person. Look, another angle. That kind of negative emotion, firstly, very bad for my health. Anger won't solve our problem. So better to develop some kind of forgiveness. And furthermore, respect, or there are negative sort of activities which causing anger. If you look from another angle, that activities, that action which usually causing anger may bring some kind of appreciation. I'm practitioner. I have to practice forgiveness. So someone must provide opportunity, practice of forgiveness. So that opportunity is brought by this, my enemy. So, I need that kind of sort of agitative sort of action. That's the only occasion practice forgiveness. And also that's the test whether your practice of compassion is genuine compassion or not. When religious people, they are
and there's a Tibetan saying, which
one Lama,
one Lama. It's a characterizes
one practitioner.
One practitioner has wrote a line which characterizes a kind of a normal, everyday kind of practitioner, religious practitioner. So he says that most supposedly religious practitioners.
Some cases.
In some cases, he says that these people have the outward form of a religious practitioner when everything is fine, like when the sun is shining, your stomach is filled.
Expression by one Tibetan, so cold climate country, so sunshine, give some warmth, and then stomach fulfilled. Then looks very holy person and talks very nice things. And when actual sort of some problems start.
So then when he or she is actually confronted with the real challenge, then crisis or challenge, then he, immediately shows that it's no different from just any other ordinary person.
So often you see, we religious people, and even politicians, I think, they say peace, 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 peace.
Right.
And something happened, then completely forget about peace, about non-violence, isn't it? In any way, Kasa. So like that, you see, we need, troublemaker. So some sort of text mentioned real troublemaker or your enemy is real teacher of your practice. So instead of feeling negative towards them, you must develop appreciation, respect.
No, appreciation, respect them.
Ngana yu takwa labdi nga di chik labsha ya. Di ngay kigen nga junju shuse kiyan la song re. Tasa lingoli ya miji tuya res. Ya miji de tu Snyder ta. Kya kashi gas. Nga soba kongyo isla re. Onto jago sa asla re. Jago jago sa asla. Nada di ta soba kazi kuko re.
This is a story I often tell, and this is a story I've received, I've heard at the feet of a great master of Buddhist compassion practitioner, Kunulama Rinpoche, who
not Lama or Turgu or just ordinary person, but great practitioner.
So at whose feet I read Shantideva's text, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life.
I received teaching from him. Since then, that's 76, 67.
1967.
Oh, that teaching really transformed my
thinking.
My thinking.
So he told the following story, which is relevant to the role of difficult people. And he said there was one person meditating in a cave, and another person walks by and asks him, "What are you doing in this cave?" And he says, "I'm meditating." "And what are you meditating?" "I'm meditating on patience and forbearance and patience." And then the other person turns to him and says, "In that case, you go to hell." And instinctively, the meditator says, "You go to hell." So there's no room for patience at all.
보트 어디 말해?
I think we had a question or comment from Dikila.
I wanted to follow up with what Matthew said, and then I had a question. Matthew was talking about altruism among chimpanzees and among animals. And for myself and my colleagues who work in the field, we see this all the time. We see animals, especially in herds, animals that live in very large families. They self-sacrifice. If there is a predator, they don't have to be related. They will push the weaker animal out of the way. And elephants especially are very, very intelligent. And we've observed rituals where if an elephant dies, there is actually mourning among the elephants. And you can see them exhibit their sadness. And they all have rituals where they will use their foreleg to pat the ground, and each one of them in the herd will do it before they leave it. So I think there is a lot to be said about altruism not just being a human condition. So that was my one point. The question I had was a little bit maybe large. So we are often, right now we've been talking about nature in many ways as sort of having value that inherently by itself. But if you look at the poorest of the poor in this world, most of them depend on nature for their survival. And I think nature, in fact, is like a grocery store for them or a pharmacy for them. That's where they go to get their food or to get their medicine or to get fuel wood. And we have plenty of studies and plenty of assessments and facts that we've done to show that if you harm nature, you're actually making poor people poorer. That in fact you're contributing to poverty. And this is where I want to push back a little bit about the education being enough or awareness being enough, because we take these studies to decision makers, to policy makers, at governments or corporations, and on an individual level, most of them will agree with us, or they will say, yes, they agree, they feel bad, these facts are accurate, the science is real. But they almost always end up saying that for the greater good, they have to make a difficult decision, and that is to go ahead with industrial development or coal as the major source of energy. And what I wonder, and my question to you is, I think they do this because they no longer factor the human individual. They actually are holding themselves accountable to a system. And so is this something that can change, where if maybe the leaders of these corporations or governments were holding themselves accountable to one, Dalai Lama or Tom or somebody, that they would actually maybe really change their policy based on education. And the second question I have is about the criteria, how we decide what good leadership is, and whether being kind and being compassionate to people and nature should also be part of that criteria. And can religions play a role in making that a criteria?
좋은 것입니다.
Need.
Yes.
직도 단 들으셨다. 군두가나 제베나 로존 하로 레베나 미기원 누구서.
또 자고도 altruism 지시해서.
그래. 뒤다 다 뭐라한테 시작.
yes.
세셔르샤.
어디?
배전 사부 급제.
Yes.
다 근데 쉬어도 니르샤 직디 다 간다 직 고제버줄이야 중고제다 다 망불 되게 땜배 갑을 땜바레 이제 지기도 수. 뭐든 여봐 같이 지금 무실래가 제대 잠내 주고.
I think just my comment. There are, I think, because of the science, the animal, particularly social animals, biological factor for their survival, they work together, live together, is necessary. So, emotional level, you see, because of the which is bring together. That's because of the friendship or love or sense of care of others' well-being. So since they are basic sort of nature, because of the social animals, interdependent, their individual sort of survival depend on rest of the herds. Group. So again now here, I often usually raise question. Those turtles sort of youngsters, the mother lay down egg, then left. They never sort of meet. Their survival, youngsters' survival, not depend on mother or someone other's care. By themselves, you see, have to survive. So such sort of animal, sentient being, I really doubt the youngster turtle, that kind of turtle, and the mother put together. I don't think they have the ability to show affection each other. Because nature, their youngsters' sort of survival, not depend on others' care. So then we, human beings, not that category. Our survival entirely depend on someone else's care. At the beginning of life. So at the time of birth, then after I think a few years, our survival entirely depend on others' care. So therefore, biologically, this compassion, limited because of that compassion, already equipped by nature. Clear? So this standard, so that we can't blame the present sort of generation's leaders who saying something, doing something different, and sometimes even they believe, but they cannot implement. It's today's reality. The whole society, through modern education, brings only thing money. No talk about moral principle. If you have power, everything there, okay. If you have money, everything okay. The whole society, we are thinking like that. So then leadership come from that kind of society, naturally, that kind of sort of way of thinking. So our work is not sufficient, just a few people gather here and talking blah, 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 blah. Not much effect. We must, because of that, carry some kind of movement. And then I think the real method, I believe, education. Education, some kind of revolution in
education of the youth.
modern education.
Education of the youth.
Youth is the education. Revolution.
Revolution.
Some new ideas, new thinking on the basis of the reality, which past we neglected. Now I think mainly, greatly, it is help from scientists. Now they realize, the other day, our sort of slogan. Healthy body, healthy mind. So now that is the real thing. Now existing modern education system only consider about a healthy body. That also not adequate since they neglect about healthy mind. So even healthy body, we must pay maximum attention about a healthy mind. So this is not talking about serving to God or serving Buddha or preparation for next life. No. Simply how to build the healthy human mind, the human being. These awful sort of events, this gap, rich and poor, and hypocrisy, and many cases lack of moral ethics. Then this immense sort of corruptions, all these things, even among the religious people, corruptions, all these lack of ethics. So the people feel ethics is almost like serving God. No. Ethics is the very basis of our happy human society, happy human family. The economy field, 5-year plan, okay. 10-year plan, okay. But we must make similar plan how to develop warm-heartedness. Warm-heartedness brings sense of responsibility. Isn't it? So not through preaching. I think you wear some different sort of kasota. Hat with Tibetans. I think Buddha, no hat.
No hat. I don't have a hat.
But we Tibetan, we really fond of the hat and the color, different color of hat. Yellow hat sacked, red hat sacked, black hat sacked. Silly. The Ladal, the Peter, Christian Suyo, Peter, Yorbe. Don't do it. Because Jelindang. 그 배타버지. 딜린당에 수요. 이게. 그래. 딜린당에 뒤끈기. 샤무 캔서 싶으시간이야. 뭐시 딜리스. 배워서 가보시다시도. 먼저 the center Kasha in the America or also in Europe 3 years retreat. Some people in 3 years retreat they learned how to
play the
clarinet. Yes. Actually, that instrument come from China. So part of Chinese culture, not Buddhist culture. Clear. So you see, in Tibet, the number of monasteries, including Namgyal Monastery, when some special occasion, when they carry the flute, they also wear Chinese dress. So the Pitilia, because of this kind of Shamudi, Demi Shamusha Tradua, Pubukushu Gonashiri. Then the Ruchi Yedinch. And it's a chance of Shamutikani, Delintang, Pubukushu Kajan Yagaslev.
So recently, His Holiness was visiting a Tibetan monastery, but it's in a Spiti, Himachal area. And it's a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, and as part of the ceremony, they had two monks standing.
The form of welcome me.
Yeah.
You see, they wear some very peculiar hat, and then that is a flute.
They were playing the clarinet, and the hat had a very, very unique shape. It's a cuckoo.
What?
So
Cuckoo.
I don't know. It's a long bee survey.
So it's got a long beak.
Yeah.
Matthew says it's hupu. Is that hupo sigursa. Hupo. So the hat was shaped like a hupo hat with a long beak. So His Holiness teased them and said, well, in that case, instead of playing the clarinet, you should actually mimic the sound of that bird.
So I think even our religious sort of circle, we not much pay sufficient attention about real meaning. Like Buddhist, as far as Buddhist is concerned, Four Noble Truth and True Truth. Just offering Buddha. And last year, again, I visited some area in Buddhist community. The villager came to welcome me, and we sort of stopped lunch break. So they also brought some bread or something, certain things. So since I know these people, or some of them I know, so I sit together and then talk. Then I ask them, what is Buddhism? And they say, oh, refuge.
Yeah, taking refuge.
Refuge, recite Buddham Shantam Gacchami, Dhammam Shantam Gacchami, Sangham Shantam Gacchami. And I said, okay, good. Now, what is Buddha? They say, don't know, I don't know. Then I asked whether some differences between Buddha and Shivaji. They say no differences. Again in Lucknow last year, some student of Buddhist school wear some yellow sort of uniform, and then they recite Buddham Shantam Gacchami, Sangham Shantam Gacchami, Dhammam Shantam Gacchami, like that. Again I ask, what is Buddha? They say, no idea. It's sad. Sad. And the worst thing, maybe a little sensitive, in Bombay, one suppose Buddhist leader, Buddhist Sangha, leader of Buddhist Sangha.
Buddhist monastic leader.
He started some chanting. He led the chanting. Very nice, very good. But then, after my lecture on Buddhism, then I received some questions. Then that person asked me whether we Buddhists believe rebirth or not. If a person not sure continuation of life, then the concept of Buddha is just fairy story. Right?
It's a then it becomes a fairy tale.
So these are clear indication. They are not pay attention. Study what is Buddhism. As far as Tibetan Buddhism is concerned, we have more than 300 volumes. All there are some part about ritual, but most part philosophical. Different philosophical viewpoint. So nobody pay attention. These sacred books put there and sort of the object of worship.
Worship them.
I often say telling them, we must consider these books are our text.
To study. To study.
For study. So we are really, I think similar. Many others. Then Indians, my Indian Hindus also, I often is telling them, many of them, early morning, some sort of offering, flower or incense, and then recite some sort of verses of Sanskrit, but without knowing the meaning.
Oh, yes.
Not much sort of use, isn't it? Right. And then worst thing is, these people who looks very seriously worship to God, but they have no hesitation to involve corruption.
To involve?
In corruption. In corruption.
To be involved in corruption. Yes, indeed. Yes.
I'm telling these days, there is no third way. Either accept religion and no longer doing sort of wrongdoings. Like corruption or injustice, telling lie, hypocrisy. If you really follow God must be honest, truthful, transparent. If you really compelled to do these things, then stop worship to God.
Agreed.
There's no third way. Either believer, be honest, truthful, or forget God, forget Buddha, and refuge money, refuge power. Okay, go that way. Isn't it? What do you think, my guru, the science guru? Do you have some reservation? No. Yes, sorry.
No.
Sorry.
I see that Jonathan has a comment here.
Your Holiness, I'd like to just follow up a little bit more specifically on Tequila's very important question about speaking to leadership, global leadership. And I understand and appreciate your pushing for education as an extremely important value. And if everyone is informed, it's very important. But as Professor Liverman talked about in her presentation, there are many tipping points. There are many
Boundaries.
tipping point boundaries,
Yeah.
and we may thresholds where, if we don't act soon, there may be some irreversible consequences. And I want to just ask you to put yourself in a situation, if you were presenting to the Earth Summit meeting next year, where you had the world's leaders and you're presenting about trying to give key messages to about the environment, to inspire the world leaders to really embrace environmental sustainability, what would you more specifically say to the world leaders? And imagine that your message will be front page headlines of the New York Times, and what would be your specific, most inspiring words that you could give to the world leaders about environmental stewardship and sustainability?
Oh, I think bluntly respond to that let that occasion happen. Then I will say. Otherwise, you see, no use. Impossible because of my presence. No. So no use. I think one person, single person, you see, change world, impossible. Buddha also failed to change world. Jesus Christ also failed to change the whole world. Nobody. Now this is modern time. You see, now democracy. So ultimately up to people. So their education. So I think because of the summit survey, I think majority of the leaders come from because of the Christian area. So I think you should go there. Like some group, like this person, sincere practitioner, right? Not sort of elaborate dress or something. Tell as a human being. Tell. That may be, you see, you have nothing. You just simply carry truth. You are not sort of influential person, right? Not famous person.
Politically known.
But as a one person, sincere person, talk and make clear. Then leaders, I think, more attraction. This is my feeling. So media, whenever I meet with media people, I always is telling them, in modern time, the media have special importance or responsibility to make awareness people. Not only news. News is bad, these bad things also they have to report. But meantime, give people hope. The answer, all these negative things. What's wrong? So what is the remedy way?
Remedy.
So like these sort of our ideas, these must make public. Right? Public no. I usually say telling the promotion of human value, number one. Second, promotion of religious harmony. Two field, the media people have sort of significant role. One thing. And televisions, all these things. Then third, I always telling them, the media people should have long nose, smell, not only in front, but what is going on and behind. Then make clear to public, provided honest, truthful, unbiased, must make clear what is going wrong behind. Then perhaps, you see, people don't So
in the front, generally, people try to behave.
So, make clear. Perhaps, you see, some sort of the leader who not much that strong principle, then they may little more cautious.
Restraint. Restraint.
That's the only way. I think you also there. One time had a meeting with religious Buddhist teachers, West Buddhist teachers, and some scandals among Buddhist teachers, some Tibetans, some Zen masters. I told them, Buddha makes certain sort of precept or certain things. These people don't care about Buddha's teaching. So the only thing is make it public. Then they may feel a little sort of cautious.
Embarrassed.
아주 배배자래. 락티가 파티스 사지. 지금. 그래서 라제 테지가 막 덤주 때문에 팬다며 봐. 라제 테지 때문에 사가로. 디마 팬나. 사지가 안 좋으니 그러다 가게면 도와. 다 public 수요지. 아니 뭐사 카딩 수요이네. 템뷰다 전시 바율래야지. 진짜 가게면 도와.
There's a Tibetan saying which says that trying to put a seal made of dough over a seal of wax is pretty useless, because if the wax seal is not going to serve the purpose of keeping something closed, then putting a seal with a wet dough is not going to work at all. So in the case of these Buddhist teachers, there were certain requirements and qualities that were necessary on the part of the teacher that were mentioned by the Buddha. So if that is not operating, then the only means left is to make their wrongdoings known to the wider public, so that can act as a kind of a deterrence on the teachers.
So I really feel in at least the free country, democratic country, and also independent judiciary, I think media people really make differences. Then the countries where the censorship very heavy, then different matter. For the timing, very difficult.
What about when the media intentionally tries to misinform the public?
That mistake. The other newspaper made clear. They're funded by some rich company or something. So their report is not objective, biased. Make clear. That's my view. And in case, I think led by like you, professors, led some demonstrations in front of their office. That's the only way. We cannot use stick. The only thing is, we do because of that, they make clear about truth. Whatever way, some harsh method, demonstrations. And if necessary, fasting. Right?
Very.
Second, 도금자디.
The fasting, yeah.
Fasting. Not indefinite. But 1 week. Good. That. I think like you, I think your weight may reduce. Me also. Now my weight, according my doctor, about this size, you see, should be around 75 because of
kilos, yeah.
kilos. Now you see my sort of weight around 78. So I have to reduce. So we work together.
We have a competition.
Oh, competition. Yes, till our next meeting. Oh, good.
My friends are desperate for me to lose some weight, and I think if I promise you that I will, maybe I will.
Morang ngosi batu ziti tes shama te kam chona ya putu slag tu sa. Zla kuntunya bo dendru shubine ya mo simshu ki gro.
Very good.
Okay.
Kunjul tamja phibine morang shuk te gro asgol.
More seriously, as you know, I had this great sense of urgency about the environmental crisis. And when Jonathan asked you about what you would say in Rio, and you weren't sure whether you were the right person to say anything, Your Holiness, I really would hope that you would say something, because many of us in the environmental area are very worried, because in 1992 at Rio, all of the world leaders went, the world religious leaders all spoke. And at this point...
At that time, I also there.
Yes.
In
yes.
Kasachuti.
You gave
Rio. Oh,
yeah.
I was there.
Yeah, you gave a wonderful speech. And
no, wonderful Kesha Marda. Wonderful speech. No.
Oh, afterwards, maybe.
Oh,
yeah.
Just another sort of small room.
Yeah.
Some NGO, group of NGO. There, I expressed what my feeling.
Ah, okay.
Well, so at that time, the local Brazil is in local newspaper. You see, more attraction towards me rather than Summit.
Yes, no, I know. And this is what I want to request for
so
this
that's
next
why
year.
South Africa, about 2 years ago, because of Olympic. So then they say, if Dalai Lama come, the more attention towards Dalai Lama, maybe a little negative about Kasachuti.
Football.
So they're reluctant. I think Chinese pressure. That's understandable.
No, but what I want to say is I actually don't think many world leaders are going to go to Rio. And I think the media will be looking for people to speak out and to talk about the environmental crisis. So I would hope that Your Holiness and other religious leaders would use the opportunity to talk, because perhaps the media won't have anybody else to interview, so they will pay attention. So.
I think like the summit, the Copenhagen summit, I think even the United States government is really very serious this time, very serious. But you see, China, very reluctant. And very cleverly, you see, brought India also their side, and then failed. So, still difficult. So then, I think you may not know, there's some hardliner Chinese officials describe me as a demon.
A demon?
Demon, no?
No, sir, not at all. They're wrong.
So they, I think after 2008 crisis in Tibet, some of the officials describe me as a demon. So all these problems due to that demon. So and that sort of news received me first time at Italy, northern Italy. Yes. I can't remember one big city. There are many mayors of different cities come together. So we sort of spent some time. I think 2 days. I think. So we already become a very close friend. So many of them are Marxist.
Yes.
Communist.
Marxist.
Okay. So I also introduced myself, as Aditya I mentioned, as far as socio-economic theory is concerned, I'm Marxist. So everybody laughs now, laughing and laugh. So then when we met Kasachukti, press. One press. The first time she told me, now some Chinese officials describe you as a demon. Then my immediate response is, oh yes, I'm a demon. I have this horn. Then those mayors, immediately express, we love become demon. Everybody.
They all want to be demons.
So here also, you see, a lot of demons here.
We're all demons.
So what demon here, you see, no proper hair, but horn. Okay, so very difficult for the timing, very difficult. But it doesn't matter. I think this kind of a meeting, and then you see, more grassroots.
From the grassroots level.
That's the only way to change, not one or two singles of leaders. Difficult.
Yes. I think that Elka has a comment for us, a question.
Your Holiness, I want to tell you first about a psychological result, and then I want to ask you a question about it. So here's the result. It turns out when people do something that causes harm, they feel bad about it, they feel responsible for it. We even have proverbs for it. We say, if you broke it, you fix it. And people will do that.
Yes.
But on the other hand, when we don't do something and our inaction causes harm, we don't feel bad about it, or not nearly as much. And
yes.
Inaction.
Do you know this?
So the question is there a similar distinction in Buddhist philosophy between mistakes of action or mistakes of inaction? And if so, should we feel actually more responsible for the things that we fail to do?
Now here.
Oh,
yes, yes. Oh. 신의 돈바사고 들고 제 어버지 마찬나 제 어버지 마셔바다 제 마어버지 제바디 매버제제 제 돈바스도
So in fact in the Buddhist tradition the very concept of a vow or a precept contains both elements of avoiding from a situation where you do something that you're not supposed to do, as well as not doing something that you were supposed to do. So both elements are there.
So here I think relevance, because I think this point I think may be relevant. When we practice forgiveness, tolerance, that does not mean we just let their wrongdoing. So now here, we must make distinction. Actor and act. Towards actor is concerned, forgiveness. No keep negative feeling or anger. Action is concerned, if circumstances are such, we need
A measure, countermeasure.
Opposition, countermeasure. We have to do. Like I think God never forgive our sin, but always forgive sinner. Special sort of love, isn't it?
Yes.
So similarly here, the actor is concerned, we must keep compassion. Even their work, action is very, very destructive, very bad. We must keep love, compassion, respect, and sense of concern of their well-being. And that motivation actually brings in desire, try to stop their wrongdoing. So countermeasure must be there. If the circumstances are such, you have the ability through your countermeasure can stop their wrongdoing. If you do not do that, it's sin. Right?
It's a negative lam.
Oh, negative.
In fact, there is, a particular precept for the Mahayana Buddhist practitioners. In the Bodhisattva practice, a part of the Bodhisattva morality, one of the precepts is that you do not oppose and counter when it was appropriate, a particular action.
So here, no contradiction. Practice of forgiveness and love does not mean you bow down. I think our own practice is concerned now, Tibet issue is concerned. We are opposing. They are wrongdoing. But meantime, we never let negative feeling towards these people. For example, after 10th March 2008 crisis, actually, you see, next few weeks, I special for practice visualize some of these sort of the Chinese officials on the spot who carry these shooting on these things. Visualize them and take their anger, their suspicion, or their sort of the negative feeling, take and give my love, my compassion, forgiveness, spiritual forgiveness. So that Tonglen, this is some of you, know Tonglen, practice of Tonglen. It won't solve the problem, but mentally, my mind is concerned, immense help to keep calm. Intellectual level, yes, recognize how bad, but deeper emotional level can keep calm. So that benefit, not to solve the problem, but keep my mind, healthy mind, immense help. So practice of tolerance, practice of forgiveness keeps your mind calm, fresh. So with calm mind, fresh mind, you can do countermeasure more effective. If you yourself, lose your peace of mind, then your countermeasure may go wrongs.
Wrong way, no?
Wrong way.
Wrong way, lam.
I think, for example, a lot of with anger, want to hit there, but then too much anger may hit here. Isn't it? You will suffer. Without anger, very peaceful, with smile, hit. That's countermeasure with wisdom. In order to function these kind of wisdom, your mind must be calm. So anger destroy your calm mind. You cannot judge properly. You cannot see the reality. So many wrong policy carried. Ultimate motivation may be good, like President Bush's policy regarding Afghanistan and Iraq. I love President Bush, really, as a human being. Very nice person. Very, very nice person. Our friendship continuously. Recently, I was in America. I went his place,
Texas.
Texas. So our friendship, as fresh as is when he was in White House.
White House.
Very good. As a human being, wonderful. Since my first meeting, he not acting like, great leader of a great nation. No, just a human being. Just a human being. Very good. But his policy, actually, another occasion after this crisis happened, I told him, I love you, I respect you, but I have some reservation about some of your policy. I mentioned to him. he laughed. He smiled like that. So these things, you see, the motivation is good to bring freedom, democracy in Iraq. So motivation is good, goal is good, but method wrong. That method also, if they know several years consequences, knows they never commit that kind of sort of policy. But lack of knowledge of holy understanding of the reality. That also lack of looking holistic way. Just Saddam Hussein, one Saddam Hussein, one single person, finish, then everything okay. That kind of sort of
attitude.
Attitude. That kind of attitude. So reality, much complex. So, and on top of that, economic crisis. Billions of dollars spent, useless sort of that, because of effort. It's quite terrible. I have some Arab sort of friend. I asked their sort of attitude towards America after that crisis. You see, most of them, you see, their attitude is something different. Sad. America, they are sort of, as the other day I mentioned, imperialist. Imperialist word. But I love America. There's real freedom. With individual freedom, innovation survey.
Innovation.
All these to see happen. So the other day I mentioned, now in field of technology, America really made innovation, a lot of sort of innovations. Now in mental sort of awareness or mental health is concerned, America should lead. So there is potential due to some of these marvelous scientists. Very good. So I love America. But some of them, some cases, I think American, they only feel, they have plenty of weapon, plenty of military force, so we can solve everything. Unrealistic. So look, Chinese communist. Their great sort of guru, Mao Zedong, once expressed, power comes from barrel of gun. It's short-sighted. Power of truth is real power. Power of gun is short-sighted. Clear? So we hear nothing. But we have truth. So power of truth never diminish. Power of gun sometimes create more problem. Isn't it?
Yes.
Right, Dad? So this is not a political meeting.
John, can I?
Your Holiness, in a way, it's a very political meeting. But I don't know if, is the mic live? It's a very political meeting. And I just want to reflect a little bit on one thread of Buddhism that is actually present here but hasn't been identified. And that is engaged Buddhism. And engaged Buddhism has two...
Engaged
So engaged Buddhism has two valences. And one of those valences is the valence of service. That is, that can be, how can we help others, for example, in the prison system or in the hospital system. And another valence is that of social action. And that is, how can we speak truth to power? And So it's very present for me as I'm leaving here, going to Delhi, doing a program in Delhi, and then on to Bodh Gaya for the international meeting of engaged Buddhists this coming week in Bodh Gaya. One of the most fascinating threads I feel that we in the Buddhist world are influenced by is a man called Gary Snyder. And Gary Snyder was a kind of a... He's a wonderful poet who in the 50s and 60s was a kind of a hippie. And he was in a tower looking for fires in the forests. And he read poetry that was written 1,000 years ago in the Tang Dynasty by a poet called Han Shan, or Cold Mountain. Now, I do not believe that Han Shan ever had the intention of influencing anyone 1,000 years in the future. But in fact, it was really because of that poetry and because of this hippie in a fire tower reading the words of a great Tang Dynasty poet who was himself a kind of hippie, had rejected the civil life as Wu Wei had, as Li Po had, as various other poets during the Tang Dynasty did. They moved away from culture and society into what you call wild space. And that is the thing that Gary Snyder recognized, wild space. And suddenly he put it together. And he put it together in a very interesting way that became, we could call it a domain in the environmental movement called deep ecology. And that is a view of ecology which is a little bit different than the environment, which separates human from the natural world. In fact, the natural world became, from the point of view of Gary Snyder's insight, a source of tremendous wisdom and also a source of compassion. So I wanted to bring his name into the arena. Also Stephanie Kaza and Joanna Macy, people who have had a tremendous influence on Western Buddhism, who have sensitized us to what you call a universal self, Macy called the ecological self. And it's a vision, really, of us being in a continuous weave with the natural world. So I just wanted to bring that feature forward. And this relates very much to a question. This relates very much to a question which actually Richie just passed forward, because how can you teach about the natural world in a secular way which takes into account this vision of Indra's net, or of interconnectedness, interdependence, and interpenetration in a secular way in the school system? So I wanted to pose that question, knowing that we're in a very odd moment in terms of education, where so much of our education is happening virtually or through our technology. And to just loop back to Sally's wild space. And the wild space is an internal space. It's a space that's about the unconditioned, but it's also about the natural world. It's about, if you will, the places in the world that aren't civilized, aren't turned into parking lots, shopping malls, but in fact have this unconditioned dimension. And how can we do this in a classroom? How can we bring this vision forward in the classroom?
We might even add, just as a note, that one option that Richie mentions in his comment is, might there even be practices, Buddhist practices, that could help develop in children this kind of ecological awareness of their interdependence with the environment.
This is something that we have touched upon before. It's for the experts to really think through and see what kind of programs can be developed. John, can I have just a second?
Yes, please.
Your Holiness, I deeply believe that your strategy of really reaching out to the children and trying to impact education really is one of the most effective approaches. I can share with you from my own personal experience how our children's understanding and natural intuitive kind of understanding of environment seems to be so different from the grown-ups. One day my younger daughter was said to me, Daddy, I need to look at the rubbish bin in the kitchen. And I said, why do you need to look at the rubbish bin in the kitchen? She said, it's for my school project. And it turns out to be it's a school project on environment which involves looking through the rubbish and listing all the things that is in the kitchen rubbish bin to make sure that what is the percentage of recyclable material that is thrown in there. And I immediately thought, imagine if millions of children are doing the same thing at their home, imagine the impact this will have on the parents' behavior. So it's small things like this, I think, will have a huge impact.
This is so true.
It's like Han Shan's poem written 1,000 years ago. You know, one small poem opened up a whole domain of the environmental movement. 1,000 years later, so who knows, but this small meeting might have some kind of outcome that we can't even begin to imagine now.
Well, Your Holiness, I know that you need to go now. I think we've only in many ways just begun to penetrate below the surface in our conversation. We hear sort of echoes of the Buddhist poet Han Shan and maybe echoes of this meeting, but I'm happy to say we'll have one more chance Friday afternoon to explore some of these issues further. And so on, I will just say very quickly about tomorrow, so we'll have actually Tutin Jimbala will discuss the issues associated with changing our behavior from the Lojong tradition. And then also Elke Weber will discuss how the psychology of decision-making is so important in the context of the environment. Friday morning, Dikila will discuss some issues in activism, and then we'll finally have a chance to come together again for a final conversation. One topic I'd love to come back to maybe is interdependence and how we can deepen our understanding of interdependence in the environmental context. But for the moment, I thank you very much for sharing so much of your wisdom with us, and I thank you, the audience.
Thank you.